All right, let's unpack this. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the life of, well, a true cultural titan. Someone whose music and message, they still echo across generations, maybe even more powerfully now. We are talking about John Lennon, an artist who, profoundly shaped the sound, the conscience, even the political landscape of the 20th century. We've poured over detailed biography, one of the most influential musicians ever, really. And our mission today, it isn't just to recap his story, no. It's to pull out the most important nuggets, the key insights about his incredible journey, the surprising facts, the aha moments, and maybe get closer to the deeper why behind his transformation. From that turbulent childhood all the way to becoming this global icon of peace and music. We want to understand what made him tick and why that still matters to you today.
Absolutely. And what's truly fascinating here is how intricately we can trace the threads. His early life, those personal struggles, his insights, they run directly through his revolutionary music, his activism. We're going to explore not just what he did, but really how those formative experiences shaped the man who ended up writing anthems for the world. His story, it's not just a timeline, it's kind of a masterclass in how personal stuff can fuel universal expression, often in ways you wouldn't expect.
And here's where it gets really interesting, right from the very start.
Yeah.
John Lennon, born John Winston Lennon, October 9, 1940, wartime Liverpool, England. But his childhood, well, it was far from a harmonious tune, was it? For many, the image of Lennon is defiance, right?
Yeah.
But those roots, they go deep into a really challenging upbringing.
Oh, completely. His early life was marked by, considerable turbulence, a profound sense of abandonment, actually. His father, Alfred Lennon, was a merchant seaman, often absent for long stretches, and then he eventually left the family when John was only about 4.
4 years old, wow.
Yeah, and his mother, Julia Stanley, she was this vibrant, charismatic presence, but she found herself unable to provide a stable home, which led to John being primarily raised by his Aunt Mimi, Mary Smith, and her husband, George. Much more conventional, but fiercely protective. So it wasn't just different houses, it was a deeply fractured family dynamic, and that left an indelible mark on him, you can be sure.
That sounds like, well, an almost unbearable situation for a little boy.
Yeah.
Being shuttled between different parental figures. But you mentioned Julia, his mother.
Yeah.
She still had a surprising influence despite all that, didn't she? She actually lit the fire for his music.
Indeed. Despite the instability, Julia was this free spirit, full of life, and she introduced John to music in a way Mimi probably never would have. She taught him banjo, some piano basics.
Banjo.
Yeah. And crucially exposed him to the exciting, rebellious new world of rock and roll records. Elvis Presley, Gene Vincent, This wasn't just learning chords. It was like opening a portal to self-expression, to an energy that really clicked with his own sort of rebellious spirit.
Right.
You can almost see the seeds of his future sound, his defiant attitude being planted right there, in those moments with his mother. A creative outlet amid the chaos.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that kind of turbulent start, it often shapes a unique perspective, doesn't it? It helps foster that witty, sometimes cynical, but also deeply sensitive nature that defined him. How do you think those early emotional scars showed up in his later art? Could you give us an example?
Well, zooming out a bit, this fragmented upbringing, the feeling of being an outsider, that deep-seated abandonment he felt, it became a recurring theme in his work. Take the song Mother from his first solo album, Plastic Ono Band.
Oh, yeah. Intense.
Incredibly intense. It's raw, almost like a primal scream. He directly confronts the absence of his parents. Mother, you had me, but I never had you. That wasn't just poetry. It was a direct, unfiltered expression of that childhood pain. It shows how his personal trauma fueled this universal message of, longing and anger related to parents. It gave him an edge, a vulnerability, a searing honesty that, few artists really have. He learned early to channel that inner turmoil.
Fascinating. How those deep personal wounds become the source of such powerful art. So what does this all mean for the music world then? Fast forward a bit. 1957, Lennon, armed with this musical passion and that rebellious streak, he forms a skiffle band called the Quarrymen. For those maybe less familiar, skiffle, it was this popular kind of improvisational folk jazz style in the UK then, right? Often homemade instruments.
Exactly, very DIY. Perfect for aspiring musicians. Acoustic guitars, maybe a washboard, T-chest bass.
And that's where destiny truly steps in, doesn't it? This is the origin story of, maybe the greatest band of all time.
Absolutely pivotal moment. That legendary meeting, July 1957, a church fete in Woolton, Liverpool. A mutual friend introduced John to this younger, technically very proficient guitarist named Paul McCartney.
And that was it.
Pretty much. John, apparently intimidated at first by Paul's talent, quickly saw their complementary strengths. The Quarrymen slowly but surely evolved. They became the Beatles as they later brought in George Harrison and then eventually Ringo Starr. Lennon was definitely the catalyst for the initial band, the sort of uncompromising leader, the intellectual force in those early years, always pushing boundaries.
And by the early 1960s,
Wow.
they weren't just a band.
Yeah.
They were a global sensation.
Yeah.
They kicked off what became known as the British invasion in the U.S. Totally changed pop music, youth culture, everything. Lennon was known for his sharp, often sardonic lyrics, his cutting wit, that rebellious edge that just connected with millions of restless teenagers. And he and McCartney, of course, one of the most celebrated songwriting duos in history. Almost telepathic sometimes, it seemed. But what was that dynamic really like? Was it always smooth sailing?
Oh, far from it, but intensely fruitful. That's the key. Lennon often described it as a kind of competition that spurred both of them on, pushed them to be better. John was known for, his lyrical cleverness, his directness, sometimes a slightly darker, more introspective feel, often simpler, raw melodies. Paul was the master of melodic invention, the craftsman, perhaps?
Right.
They'd often bring bits of songs to each other, and the other would help finish it, polish it, elevate it. It was this creative tension, a blend of really different strengths that made something greater than either could do alone. Their friction was almost as important as their synergy.
That raises an important question, then. What kind of impact did his specific songwriting have within the Beatles? Beyond the hits, what distinguished Lennon's voice?
Lennon's songwriting evolved hugely, didn't it? It reflected his growing social awareness, his psychological depth. Think about Help from '65. Outwardly upbeat, catchy, but he later said it was a genuine cry for help. He felt lost in the Beatlemania chaos.
Wow, I didn't realize that about Help.
Yeah. Then Strawberry Fields Forever in '67. Just a profound psychedelic journey into his Liverpool childhood. Memory, alienation, wanting to escape. It's all in there. And then you have things like All You Need Is Love, simple, powerful message for the summer of love. And later, more political tracks like Come Together or Revolution.
Right.
These aren't just catchy tunes. They're complex pieces showing his creativity, his commitment to using music for personal reflection and social commentary. His voice, often more experimental, more reflective. It was a crucial counterbalance to McCartney's more universal pop sensibility,
Definitely. So the Beatles break up in 1970, end of an era that really defined a decade. For so many people, it felt like the world lost something irreplaceable. But for Lennon, it was just the beginning of a powerful solo journey, a chance to explore his own voice even more directly, without the band dynamic.
And his solo debut was incredibly significant. That first album, John Lennon Plastic Ono Band, 1970, it was startling. So raw, emotional, intensely personal, stripped down, confessional, like a musical exorcism almost.
Exorcism, yeah.
He'd recently done primal scream therapy with Arthur Janoff, and you can hear it on the album. Stripping away the polish, the artifice, revealing deep pain and anger. Tracks like Working Class Hero, Mother, like we mentioned, stark, unflinching looks at his past, his identity. It wasn't just different from the Beatles, it was a bold statement. He was moving into a new, much more vulnerable space artistically.
Then, 1971, he releases Imagine, and that title track, well, it became this enduring anthem of peace, of unity for the entire world. It's hard to think of a song more universally recognized for its message. Still today, cuts across languages, cultures, year after year, just testament to its power, its simplicity.
Absolutely. Imagine was softer, more melodic than Plastic Ono Band, sure, but just as potent in its message. It presented this vision of a world without war, greed, divisions, and it resonated with millions, still does. But he didn't stop making politically charged or deeply personal music there. Albums like Mind Games in '73 explored mental and spiritual liberation. And later, Double Fantasy in 1980, the collaboration with Yoko Ono.
Right, after his house husband period.
Exactly. That album was a celebration of domestic life, family, renewed love, a real contrast to his earlier, angrier stuff. It reflected that period of self-imposed musical retirement when he focused on raising his son, Sean. His music wasn't just entertainment. It really became a direct channel for his worldview, and it evolved as he did.
And it wasn't just in the songs either. His personal life became so intrinsically linked to his activism. He marries artist Yoko Ono in 1969, and together, wow, they become these global symbols of peace activism, most famously staging those iconic bed-ins for peace in Amsterdam and Montreal.
Right.
Not just symbolic, right? It was a deliberate, media-savvy act designed to grab global attention.
And it absolutely worked. The bed-ins were, well, a brilliant form of nonviolent protest. They invited the world's media into their honeymoon suite, basically turning a private event into a very public platform. advocating for peace, specifically against the Vietnam War.
Just lying in bed.
Just lying in bed talking about peace. They believed they could counter the sensationalism of war coverage that way, capture headlines differently. And Lennon was incredibly articulate, charismatic in those settings, using his immense fame tirelessly for peace, civil rights, anti-war movements, this outspoken stance, criticizing war, materialism, social injustice. It earned him huge admiration, but also significant controversy.
I can imagine. Using that level of fame for such direct political messaging must have stirred things up. And it wasn't just public opinion, was it? His activism actually got him into trouble with U.S. authorities.
Precisely. The Nixon administration particularly saw Lennon's influence as a threat, especially his ability to galvanize young people against the Vietnam War.
Right.
They started a concerted effort to deport him from the United States based on a minor 1968 cannabis conviction back in the UK.
Wow. So they used that against him.
They did. It led to a 4-year legal battle. Lennon and Ono fought tirelessly for their right to stay in the U.S. and continue their activism. It was a clear attempt, really, to silence a prominent dissenting voice. It shows the real-world impact and resistance his activism generated. He was pushing back against power.
Amidst all this global activism, creative output, he was also a father. 2 sons. Julian Lennon with his first wife, Cynthia Powell.
Yeah.
And Sean Lennon with Yoko Ono. So family life, intense activism, groundbreaking music, all interwoven. A complex tapestry. Tragically, this powerful voice, this complex person, silenced way too soon. December 8, 1980, John Lennon was shot and killed outside his New York City home, the Dakota, by Mark David Chapman. He was only 40 years old. Just a shocking, devastating end to such an impactful life. Still evolving, really.
His death shocked the world to its core. It felt like an almost unimaginable loss, robbing the world of an artist who still had so much more to give. And in many ways, his untimely passing, it sort of solidified his status as this unparalleled cultural and musical icon. It tragically cemented that urgent message of peace and understanding he'd spent his life broadcasting through his art, his actions, turned him into a kind of martyr for the causes he championed.
So what does this all mean for his legacy today? Well, he remains absolutely a timeless symbol. Peace, love, artistic expression. His music continues to inspire generations, both Beatles stuff and solo work. But how do we see his influence now beyond just the songs? What's the deeper resonance for people today?
Well, his influence, it really transcends music. He represents the ideal of the artist as activist, someone unafraid to speak truth to power, even at great personal cost. He taught us perhaps that art could be a powerful force for social change, not just entertainment. And we see specific markers of his legacy all around. In 1997, for instance, Liverpool Airport was renamed John Lennon Airport, with that incredibly fitting motto, "Above us only sky."
Perfect.
Yeah. And he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice, first with the Beatles in '88, then as a solo artist in '94. These aren't just awards, they represent the permanent, undeniable mark he left on global culture. As a figure who dared to imagine a better world and urged us all to join him, his challenge to authority, his unwavering idealism, it continues to inspire new generations to question, create, advocate.
As he famously said in Imagine, "You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one." And that quote, like his music, like his life, it continues to resonate because it speaks to that universal hope that shared humanity. And that brings us towards the end of our deep dive today. We've journeyed through the challenging early life of John Lennon, explored the revolutionary sound and global phenomenon of the Beatles, his raw personal solo career, his passion activism with Yoko Ono, and finally his tragic, untimely death. It's an incredible story. Immense influence, profound personal struggle, unwavering impact.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Lennon's story really reminds us how deeply personal experiences, even painful ones, can fuel these universal messages. Hope, change. He used his art, his platform, to constantly push for a better world, often facing huge pressure, criticism, and his calls for unity, imagination, peace. Well, they're perhaps more relevant now than ever before. He truly believed in the power of a collective dream to reshape reality.
You know, when you think about Above Us Only Sky, that airport motto, and his line, "You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one," it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What does it truly mean to dream collectively for a better world? To really envision a reality beyond our current limits? And maybe more importantly, what responsibilities do we hold as individuals in trying to make those dreams real? Even if it feels like we're just one voice, it's definitely a powerful thought to carry with you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you feel a little more well-informed and perhaps a little more inspired. Until next time.